Inside Out. I have been so excited to see this movie because I felt like this was going to be Pixar's return to that originality and real creativity that we're so used to seeing from them. After Cars 2 and the disappointment of Brave, and even Monsters University to an extent, although that was a much better movie than I think anybody was anticipating. It still was a prequel, and we were all kind of hungry for Pixar to get back to what they do best, which is show us the world in a different light. And when I first heard that it was going to be from the point of view of emotions, I got so excited. I was like, yes, this is Pixar's opportunity to do something really different and something that we've never seen before. And that's such a, like, they could go like all out with this concept of emotions. And I was getting more and more worried with the more promotion material let out because I was afraid that it was kind of going to turn into like a kitsch fest and just when I saw that the whole deal was joy and sadness being separated from the others and having to find a way back, I was like, really? You could do literally anything with personified emotions, and you're going to do like the buddy trip movie, like, oh, we have to find a way back to everybody else. It just so I was nervous about that. And yeah, I would definitely say that Inside Out is one of the studio's weaker movies. There were things I liked about it, but on the whole, it was um, one of their lesser films. But not totally bad film. And I guess I'll start with the negative. And that is, first of all, that the story is not very strong. It has a good idea, but nothing about it really coalesces between the emotions in the little girl's head and then her real world story. And I can't help but compare it to Osmosis Jones, which is one of my favorite animated movies, especially in terms of the style is just so unique. You will not see another animated movie that looks exactly like it. But even in Osmosis Jones, it had the corny, the white blood cells are police officers, and they go to see an illegal nightclub on a pimple on his forehead where all the germs hang out. So it was full of that stuff too. But for one thing, the story between the main characters in the body, Ozzy and Trix, was strong enough on its own, and then the story in the real world between Bill Murray and his daughter was also strong. Inside Out does not have that. Neither the emotions or the real world are strong enough on their own, and they don't come together very well at all. Not to say that they have bad ideas, but there's just not enough substance there, and I just felt like a lot of time was spent, like too much time was spent developing how the world worked, but not enough. The world of the little girl's mind, but not enough that it felt like a real place. And maybe, I guess, to go back to Osmosis Jones, like, they go all over the body. It's just they're confined in the mind, and I get that for Inside Out, but for a movie where the whole idea is, oh, we're lost and we're separated and we have to get back to where we need to go, which is basically Bolt. Like, Bolt was a vanilla movie with a very contrived way in which they got lost. But he ended up in New York when he was supposed to be in LA. They never, in Inside Out, they never lose sight of where they're supposed to be. Like, it's never like, oh, we're really lost. It's like, it's such a small scale, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And the way they get lost is just as contrived as it was in Bolt. I get the biggest problem I had was specifically with the scene where I can't remember where they are. They need to get to the train of thought. Obvious joke, but I'll accept it. But they need to go through Imagination Station or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's a dangerous place, and it's a place where abstract thought is given visual representation, which is interesting. and like joy and sadness get caught in there, and they go through like the whole sadness is like, oh, we're being broken down into abstract concepts. Now we're just shapes. Now we're just colors, and now we're two-dimensional. And it's cute, but it had no place in the story. It didn't. You could have removed it, and nothing would have been lost from the film. And there's nothing worse than that, than saying you cut this scene and you would lose nothing. And it was really just done so that Pixar could do some fancy things in the animation, which was cool. And I love when Pixar does stuff like that, but that's what short films are for. And, when it worked in Your Friend the Rat, because they did a lot of things with stop motion and 2D, and it worked in Paperman because they did a lot of experimentation with hybrid styles, because in a short film, it's the essence of a story. And that is what short films are for, because you don't have the time, people aren't expecting a whole cohesive narrative. You can kind of play around with new technologies and new techniques, and it doesn't you're not gonna anger anybody when your plot threads aren't tied up. And that's what happened in Inside Out. I felt like that scene in particular was useless, and for the amount of time that was spent building up the problems in this movie, there was very little time for resolution. And that was disappointing. The other big thing I was disappointed in was just that they didn't do as much as they could with this concept of emotions personified. Joy and sadness get separated from command center, and the remaining emotions have no idea how to run the show. And it was just the scene that bothered me the most, aside from the whole abstract thought, was the dinner sequence. And again, to compare it to another project that worked very well, The Incredibles, it's a superhero movie, and everybody's favorite scene is the dinner scene, because that's where the family's whole emotions come out, and you can see them interacting not just as superheroes, but as people. I remember being on forums, and fans of The Incredibles were just raving of how that was everybody's favorite scene. You get to Inside Out, and there was nothing to this dinner scene. There was no substance. For one thing, it had some incredibly sexist and unfunny humor. You go into the parents' heads of this scene, which I was not expecting, and I was glad that they showed that. Real quick, to delve into a little bit of psychology, I thought it was interesting that the parents' brains, the dad's, all the emotions were male, and all the emotions were female. Where in Riley's head, 3 of the emotions are female and 2 of them are male. And I feel like Pixar kind of did that because, God forbid, we have a whole cast entirely of female main characters. But, at the same time, I can appreciate this idea of maybe everyone is not, all girls are not completely feminine. And, there is the whole concept in psychology of the animus and the anima, every man has a feminine side, every woman has a masculine side. I know this is thinking way too much into it, but this is what we do. But yeah, I will totally buy it that Riley's brain would have some female emotions and some male oriented emotions. But then it's interesting then why the decision to have her parents have either one or the other. Is this a commentary on when you get to be an adult you suppress certain things about yourself, or do you just discover what you are and what you identify as? It's whole gender things that I don't think Pixar was trying to make any grand statements about gender, but I just thought that concept was interesting. What I didn't like about that scene was when the mom is kind of trying to prompt her daughter she says, oh, let's get Dad's opinion on this whole situation. You go into the dad's head, and he is not even paying, like all of his emotions are watching football. On the screen, they realize that the wife is talking to them, like, oh crap, you'll turn off. Like, that's not funny. That's like sitcom humor, the lowest possible gender bias joke you could possibly make. And like the dinner scene didn't work for me because it felt, because we were seeing things entirely from the emotions point of view, it felt so scripted. Like fierce. Oh, they're like, oh, we don't know how to respond to Mom asking Riley how her day went. Fear, you do it. And Fear, taps it, and she's like, it was fine. Gee, don't ask me. And then they're like, oh, Anger, now you try being Joy. And she's like, okay, Anger, I'll, and it's like, oh, please, like, stop asking me. I don't want to talk about my day at school. And then the dad is like, oh, daughter is showing signs of sass. Must respond by putting my foot down. And, it felt like programs interacting with each other as opposed to actual people, which in a movie about emotions, that's bad. It's really bad. And, of course, the cherry on top of the whole disastrous scene was when the mother is like, oh, is so exasperated with the dad for sending the girl to her room for really nothing. Let's be honest. It's not like she did anything that warranted it, but still, she's like, oh, that was a disaster. Let's daydream about a Brazilian supermodel. Oh, I can't believe I turned him down to marry this. And it's like, oh, that's so mean. That's such, again, it's like the crappy sitcom humor of relationship comedy, and it sucked so much. It was like, that was so unnecessary. From Pixar, come on, guys, you are better than this. The one thing I did like about the dinner scene was seeing the parents have emotions that were very equal. Like, they all sit around a table and are like a committee that they all have equal voices and input and confer with each other. And every time we see into the mind of an adult on this movie, it's very organized and stuff like all their brains have a theme. Like, at one point we get to see into a teacher's mind, and there's a globe, and then a ruler is the control panel. Whereas, compare that to Riley's mind, it's very undefined and plain, very rounded, very childlike, and there's not a lot of details there. Implying that she's still young and she hasn't had time to really define herself and figure out who she is. And I thought that was very interesting. So I guess we'll start to move into praise here. One of the other things I liked was, Riley, there are these islands of personality in Riley's brain, like Hockey Island and Goofball Island and Family Island. A really simplistic way of showing who she is, and they're all separate from each other. But as when joy and sadness get separated from her brain, and they're implied to be the two most important emotions. So I guess that's why, going back to the basics of storytelling, in Greek, going all the way back to the Greeks, there's comedy and tragedy, happiness and sadness. So I guess maybe the point they were going for here was, without those core emotions, you can't, fear, disgust, and anger aren't as broad as joy and sadness. I don't know. But, joy and sadness get separated from Riley's brain, and suddenly she can't feel anything, which is a great metaphor for depression. It's not sadness, it's feeling nothing. But yeah, the more time that joy and sadness spend outside of control center, Riley's personality islands start to fall away. Which is a great metaphor for kind of losing touch with who you are as a child as you start to grow up. And the first island that falls away is Goofball Island, which is fantastically metaphorical. And you know, things start as Riley loses touch with her friends and stuff like that. You know, her islands start to fall away, and you know, it was a great visual metaphor for, you know, losing touch with parts of yourself that were important to you when you were young, and having to grow up and discover new parts of yourself.